Since the launch of Diablo IV all the way through the present day, the Barbarian has been an insane class in Diablo IV, and I wanted to dive into some of the reasons behind why that is, and to also look at some of Blizzard's shortcomings when it comes to balancing this class. To dive right into it, I primarily believe that this reason is due to Barbarian having 4 different weapons, and not only that, but 2 of them being two-handed weapons which get double aspect power. One way that we could look at this is as though the Barbarian gets 6 weapon aspects in a sense, because we've got 2 of them being doubled and 2 of them as singles, totaling up to 6. If we want to quickly compare this to other classes, we can start with the Rogue. The Rogue gets the second most amount of weapons that they can put aspects on, with a total of 3 and 1 of which being doubled. This, in a sense, could be looked at kind of like 4. Meanwhile, the Sorcerer, Druid, and Necromancer are completely left in the dust, only getting 2 weapon aspects or 1 doubled aspect. And it's not as though the Barbarian is left in the dust when it comes to their overall class system, which is known as the Arsenal system. This is comparable to the Sorcerer's enchantment system or the Necromancer's Book of the Dead. Before we even got to dive into Diablo IV and I had first heard about the Arsenal system, I was under the impression that this was the extent of it, that it was just the fact that they got to carry more weapons and therefore more aspects. But tacking this system on top of it really adds kind of that cherry on top that I'm not really sure the Barbarian needs. Now you might say that the Barbarian needs to be balanced up or tuned up in some kind of way because they're the only class that's currently in the game that is strictly a melee build. And although there is maybe some merit to that, that's not exactly looking like it's going to remain the case anymore in Season 4. Let's go ahead and take a look at some footage that Rob had posted to his channel earlier today, in which he showed that the Barbarian in Season 4 is going to be able to do damage from a pretty good distance with their melee attacks.
Berserking here on the boots. Then we're rocking a lot of quake size. You can see, like, I can quake here and it hits the enemy. See how crazy it can be?
Now, although this is a PTR, and I could absolutely see this getting changed, the tempering system is a really dangerous thing when we think about it, because this gives the Barbarian even more benefits to having additional weapons. Let's take a Barbarian, for example, in Season 4 who has a grandfather. I'm bad at the game, so I don't have a grandfather, but if somebody were to have one in Season 4, they still have 3 other weapons that they can temper on top of to do things like increase the radius on Hammer of the Ancients or any other skill for that matter. Let's compare this to a Sorcerer in Season 4 who would want to be playing a Fireball build. If you're using the Staff of Endless Rage, you don't get to have any weapon tempering on your entire character because you want to commit yourself to this kind of playstyle. The Barbarian, on the other hand, can commit themselves to these playstyles that are locked behind uniques while continuing to be able to temper 3 different weapons. As much as I'm generally a fan of this tempering and masterworking system, I think that this is going to make the divide between the Barbarian and the other classes even larger than it's ever been historically. Now, Blizzard has been making some attempts to nerf the Barbarian, but they're approaching this problem in the wrong way. They've been targeting Overpowered because, generally speaking, the best build for the Barbarian has been based around Overpower, especially for Seasons 2 and 3 when we look at Hammer of the Ancients. And although that was the Barbarian's best build in Season 2, and a contender for its best build in Season 3, maybe kind of competing with Charge, I don't think that this is the root problem. Overpower itself as a mechanic doesn't seem to be the problem that's causing the Barbarian to go out of control. Blizzard chose to tune back Overpower in Season 3, and in the Season 4 PTR they've taken even further steps to tune Overpower back. But if I were to propose the question to you, is the Pulverized Druid overpowered? Your answer would probably be no. It's a fine class, it's a fine build. Same would go for Blood Surge Necromancer. I don't think that this build is just out of control and ruining the game. These builds are also made around Overpower, and Overpower is not destroying Diablo IV. And as a reminder to anybody who may have forgotten or who may not know, the way that damage works in Diablo IV is based on different multipliers, damage multiplying against itself. Each one of these offensive aspects is its own damage multiplier. And so, for example, if we take my Edge Masters here, this is going to multiply my end damage by 1.4. And I don't think that this is the fault of Overpower or any other mechanic inside of Diablo IV. I don't even think that it's a problem with how damage is calculated, as this is pretty normal for action RPGs. But simply put, if you keep multiplying a number more and more, it's going to get larger and larger. And when you add more numbers to the Barbarian than any other class in regards to these multipliers, they're going to end up with a larger result. One indicator that these 4 weapons are a problem is when we look at the Barbarian in the lower levels before they get any aspects added onto these weapons. Before stacking all these different multipliers, the Barbarian is actually one of the weaker classes with regards to leveling and leveling up really quickly in those early levels before you get your aspects going. The Barbarian is not particularly powerful. But once you get up to level 50, maybe 60, and you really start getting your gear together and you get these aspects going, that's when the true power of the Barbarian really starts to shine. And although this is certainly a simplification of overall class power on a level-to-level basis, it could be used as an indicator to say that this is definitely a problem. And at this point, the ability for the Barbarian to use 4 weapons is so baked into their class identity. For example, if we look at the Earthstrikers aspect, this says that after we swap weapons 8 times, the next non-basic skill will overpower and deal more damage. This is just one example of an aspect that says after swapping weapons, something happens. This is to say that the solution can't simply be taking away some of the Barbarian's weapons. I think there has to be something implemented that's a little bit more complex than that. And I'm sure there's 100 different ways that Blizzard could approach this. However, I'd like to know what you think. Is this in fact the reason that Barbarians are so powerful? Is it because they have access to more offensive aspects than any other class? And if so, what is the approach to fixing it? Now, this video is pretty short and straight to the point, but I'd like to know what you think. Go ahead and drop a comment down below with your solution for the Barbarian class. As always, I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.